Welcome to another episode of Strictly Business Unscripted. I'm your host, Keandra Jones. This podcast educates, ignites inspiration, fosters encouragement, and paves the way for growth among small businesses and the overall Oak Cliff community. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Dallas Zoo, Home Care Network, and ServPro. Thank you for your support. Now, let's get into it. Today's episode is titled Growing Dallas's Southern Sector. And we're going to be here with Peter Brodsky, who is a business executive in Dallas, Texas, who is transforming a 1970s era mall into a modern mixed-use development. The Shops at RedBird. It will provide quality amenities to an underserved area here in Southern Dallas. Prior to acquiring the Shops at RedBird, Peter had a 20-plus year career in private equity where he completed over $2 billion of transactions. Peter graduated from Yale with a BA in Russian language and literature. Okay, welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
Okay, so I was surprised when I read your bio. You speak Russian?
Well, I'm a little rusty if it's one of those use it or lose it things, but I speak it. If I went back to Moscow today, which I would not today,
Okay.
After about a week, I would be pretty conversant. It's back here somewhere.
Really?
Yeah.
I think you're the only friend I have that speaks Russian.
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to say anything in Russian now because my accent's terrible,
Okay.
but it's a beautiful language.
Really?
Beautiful language. It's a fascinating language because it's structured so differently from English. It has something like 3 times as many words as English does. So, like I was just telling my wife the other day, for instance, in Russian, the word father-in-law is a different word if you're talking about the wife's father-in-law and the husband's father-in-law.
Really?
Yeah. So the word for father of my wife is different than the word for father of my husband.
Interesting.
It's a very you can have a lot of distinctions. There's a million different ways to say I went to the store. If we say I went to the store, you don't know if I told you I went to the store, unless you can figure out from context, you don't know if I'm still at the store or if I'm back. Like I went to the store, now I'm back and here are my groceries. Or you were calling me up on the phone and say, where'd you go? And I said, well, I went to the store. I'm shopping right now. Those are 2 completely different words in Russian. The word went. One means I went and I'm still there. One means I went and I'm back. One means I went by car. One means I went by foot. Those are all different words.
Oh my gosh.
So it's a really fascinating language. And so it's a beautiful, that's why the literature is so beautiful to read in the original, because the subtleties of the meanings of the words are so specific.
So how long did it take you to fluently learn how to speak this language?
It took me about 5 years. So I started in college. I've always been good with languages. What happened was my family, all 4 of my grandparents were born in the U.S., which is very unusual for Jewish people of my generation. Most of my friends who were Jewish growing up, their parents came over during the Holocaust, but mine were all here. But my grandfather's parents were from Russia. I never had any idea that that's where my family came from. And when I was in 10th grade, I went on a high school trip to the Soviet Union in 1986. And we were in Leningrad, and we stopped at a restaurant on Brodsky Street. And it was the first time I ever understood that Brodsky was a Russian name. So when I was in college, I took Russian, and it was going to eat up so many credits, I decided to major in it. But I basically started it after freshman year. But then I lived there a lot. I took a semester there when I was a junior in college, and then I lived there for a year after college. So it was really by the end of that year that I approached fluency.
Hmm.
But I still wasn't completely fluent. There were still, like I said before, there's so many words, and verb the verb tenses are very confusing, and the nouns decline and the verbs conjugate. It's all very it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's not quite as bad as Chinese that doesn't have an alphabet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a lot. So I would say I was very, very, very conversant, but there were books that I still couldn't read.
So what I found strange later on after I thought through this is that I was more intrigued by the fact that you spoke Russian than the fact that you went to Yale. So what does that say about me? So all of it is impressive. But anyway, so we know all of the thing or some of the things that you've achieved in your career. But who are you outside of that? Let's get to know who Peter is outside of the fact that you speak Russian. Who are you?
Well, I'll answer the question, but I want to just put a bookmark on something, which is that the experience I had in Russia has been the primary experience that I've drawn on with RedBird. So we can get to that later when we start talking about when we start talking about RedBird. But who am I? That's a very difficult question to ask to answer. I'm a middle-aged guy. I am. It sounds very cliche, but I'm first and foremost a husband and a father. I've been married to a fantastic woman for 27 years. We got married when I was 26. And we had 3 kids together. And I'm actually going through a little bit of an existential crisis right now because we're empty nesters. And so I'm finding myself having lost all of my hobbies because my hobbies involved going to my kids' games and all that stuff. So I've got to get some hobbies. I got to learn how to play golf or something or pickleball or something. I love to read. I'm always reading a book or at least listening to a book on tape. I like learning. I'm constantly trying to learn. I'm a politics junkie.
Oh goodness.
I pay attention to everything political.
Okay.
I watch the news every night. And I can get a little bit obsessive about it.
Really?
Yeah, it's really important. And I got a lot of time on my hands right now because my kids have all left.
Yeah.
So I think about that a lot. I'm biting my fingernails about the election.
Well, okay, friend. So I'm an empty nester, as you know, and have been. My daughter turned 30 on Friday. Can you believe that?
I cannot believe that looking at you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Who drinks a bunch of Diet Cokes. But
Yes,
anyway,
exactly.
which we just talked about. And I would encourage you to find some hobbies
Yeah.
pretty quickly. It helps.
Yeah, I don't sit around the house bored, but I definitely want to take up golf.
Yeah.
I'm also a very, very high stress person. And what I've heard about golf is you're so focused on hitting that damn ball.
Really?
Yeah, that you really can't think about anything else. It allows you to clear your mind.
Well, then I need to golf.
Yes. Well, we should learn together.
We should, because as you know, I'm a high stress. I
Yeah.
came in here stressed the hell out. So, yeah.
Yeah.
The first question that I asked you about your identity is because I didn't have identity outside of my daughter and this place for the longest of time. And I had to relearn who I was after my daughter left. And every time somebody asked me who I was, I associated it with the Oak Cliff Chamber of Commerce. And one day I realized, they could escort my behind out of here at any moment. Then who would I be?
Yeah. I went through that when I left my my private equity job at the end of 2010. I was very, very lucky, and I'd made money doing that. And I decided I was going to take a full year off, which is a very luxurious thing to do at the age of 40.
Yeah.
And I had a really hard time figuring out who I was outside of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had a bit of a rude awakening. There have been a few events in my life where I've had to come face to face with who are my real friends
Mm-hmm.
and who are my friends of convenience,
Mm-hmm.
because we work together. Not that there's anything malicious. I
Sure.
don't know. I don't mean any ill intention by friends of convenience, but you work with people for 15 years. You think you're really friends. You stop working together, you never talk to them again, you weren't really
That's
friends.
right.
And so I went through that. Um, I remember I was on a nonprofit board, and everybody was putting their on the board letterhead. It was their name and where they worked, and you know I had to put like community volunteer or something. It was it. So I've gotten past that. I know who I am.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I definitely feel like I have an identity.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, very wrapped up in RedBird,
Mm-hmm.
um, but that's in other people's minds.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know that at some point RedBird is going to end for me.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then I'm going to wake up the next morning and I'm still going to be married to Lael,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm still going to be a father, and I'm still going to be interested in books, and I'm still, and I'm going to have a certain set of friends that are my real
Yeah.
friends.
Yeah. And by then, though, you'll be golfing.
Maybe. I would say my area of I'm a pretty disciplined person,
Mm-hmm.
but one area where I have very poor discipline is anything involving athletics.
Mm-hmm.
I hate working out. I
Same.
hate working out.
Me too.
And I have to force myself to do it. I don't really play any sports. I never played any sports.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in New York City. It's easy in Manhattan. I grew up in Brooklyn, but I went from seventh grade on to a school in Manhattan,
Mm-hmm.
and there were no fields. It was in a building,
Mm-hmm.
and so it was very easy to uh, not play sports,
Mm-hmm.
and so I just never did.
Hmm.
And so getting exercise is hard for me because it's work. I
Yeah.
mean, I put the work in workout. It's
Yeah.
not fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll see whether I actually motivate to go out and learn to hit a golf ball.
Okay.
It remains to be seen.
Okay, so let's talk about some of your pre-Redbird accomplishments. You've done a whole lot of things. What were some of those accomplishments prior to? And then how did it lead you to doing this project at Redbird?
Well, um, I had a great career in private
Mm.
equity. I have to tell a story sort of as a precursor to talking about my career, which is my grandfather, not the one I mentioned before, whose parents were Russian, but my on my mother's side of the family was a very, very successful person.
Mm.
And I once asked him, what was the key to your success?
Mhm.
And he said, well, I was born in 1919
Mhm.
in the United States of America as a white man with wealthy parents. And that's how he started out.
Mm.
And he basically said, I was given the best education. He went to Horace Mann, which is a very exclusive private school that was around even back then.
Mhm.
He went to Harvard.
Mhm.
Then he served in World War II. He said, then he went into finance. He said, if you couldn't make money in the 1950s in finance when the country was booming, to say nothing of the 80s. And it really left an impression on me because he was a truly brilliant man.
Mhm.
He was a man that was so deep that he would look at a painting and cry because it would move him so deeply. He was that kind of brain and heart, and he gave himself no credit for his success.
Hmm.
He understood that yes, you have to work hard,
Mhm.
yes, you have to earn what you have, but a lot of life is luck and timing.
Hmm.
And he was very cognizant of his own luck and timing. And he was basically saying, I could have been born the exact same person But if I had been born with different skin color or a different gender or at a different time or in a different country, I wouldn't have been afforded the same opportunities to succeed.
Right.
And so let me say the same thing about my career.
Okay.
I was born on third base, two college educated parents, never wanted for anything. We weren't flying around on private planes or anything, but never wanted for anything, was given the best education, graduated from college debt free, and was able to go have an incredible experience like living in Russia. And while I was living in Russia, I figured out that I really wanted to do something in business. I was trying to figure out what to do that would use my Russian. And there were basically four choices: law, academia, government service, or business. And the first three were very unattractive to me. And so by process of elimination, I picked the last one. And I met a guy who was an American who was doing banking in Russia in 1992. And he said, "It is so screwed up how they do business here. You need to go home and learn how to do it right before you come back here and learn how to do it wrong." It was a very corrupt system and still is. And so I applied for an investment banking training program. I was accepted to that. I did that for 2 years. And at the end of 2 years, I had really figured out a couple things. I liked business. I liked finance. I did not want to live in Russia anymore for some personal reasons, and also because the country was kind of falling apart already. And I didn't want to be in investment banking. And I got a job offer to move to Dallas to go work for a private equity firm. I didn't even know what private equity was. And it was right when the private equity industry was beginning. And so, like my grandfather said, if you couldn't make money in private equity in the 90s, you were doing something wrong, because it was a brand new industry. And so I joined a firm that took off like a rocket ship. That rocket ship subsequently crashed, but along the way was able to do very, very well. And I had a great career. I was given an enormous amount of responsibility very early in my career. I think I'm a smart guy. I work very hard, and so I'm proud of what I have accomplished, and I think I earned it, but I'm also very aware that a lot of it was luck and timing. I just think that I took advantage of pretty much every opportunity that presented itself to me that I was lucky enough to get. I tried to maximize it.
Peter, when I met you,
9 years ago.
was it 9 years ago?
We just celebrated my 9th anniversary of buying RedBird.
Okay. So when I met you all those years ago, one of the things that did surprise me is that you were so woke. You know what I mean by saying that. As a black girl, very black girl, and you being the white guy you are, just the level of awareness, self-awareness that you had of your privilege. And unfortunately, it is rare for me to get to talk to people in these circles that look like you, that have that degree of wokeness. And I can only imagine how much that's been needed being in this southern sector. Can you talk a little bit about that?
This is where we get back to Russia.
Okay.
Because I grew up, and I'm sure you grew up, being told the Soviet Union was a horrible place. Everybody there hates it. Everybody's a dissident. Everybody's oppressed. And the United States, United States is perfect, and the Soviet Union is terrible.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. I would not have wanted to live in the Soviet Union.
Sure.
I do not believe in that system. I think that system is not the right system to allow the most people possible to thrive. But there were patriots in the Soviet Union too. And in particular, I made a really good friend who's a friend to this day, who was sad when the Soviet Union broke apart because it was the country he'd grown up in. And he had positive associations with it. He had, they had like their young communist league was like our Boy Scouts. He said the Pledge of Allegiance to his flag. And the reason why I say it's relevant is because I realized that I was coming into that country with a particular perspective, but that didn't mean that it was the only perspective. And I met people who had very different perspectives than I did. We could agree on some basic facts, about wealth, GDP and things like that. But the fact is that my friend loved his childhood, loved his country, and saw a lot of good things in it.
Okay.
And so when I entered Southern Dallas, it was with that very important life lesson having been learned.
Yeah.
Which is that just because I think something doesn't make it so, and you have to have an open mind to other people's perspectives. Yeah. And so when I first bought RedBird, I was very well aware of the perspective of a lot of people in Southern Dallas, which is, what's this white guy doing buying one of our prime assets, right, and how are we going to get screwed in the process? Right. Are we going to be displaced? Is he going to continue to milk it and put low quality amenities there? Is he going to come in as the great white hope and be like, here I come to save the day, and let me tell you what you want, and I'll handle it because I know better? Those are all real experiences that people in Black communities have had over and over and over again.
That's right.
And I really drew on my experience in Russia to remain open-minded to hear other people's perspectives and view them as valid, even if they were surprising to me. And so I think that really helped me begin to build trust with the community. I remember in my original presentation, the last slide was a picture of an ear going like this, because I wanted to listen to people and listen to what they wanted. And the other thing I learned, and it's funny that it's a lesson that we have yet to learn as a society.
What's that?
But when you have a fight with someone and you have done something regrettable, if you don't own it and apologize for it, it's going to be very difficult for that person to forgive you.
That's right.
And if you deny that it happened, the relationship is over. And so I made very sure to begin every community meeting that we did with sort of a recitation of what I just said earlier, which is, I know that this community has not been well treated by white developers. And I know you're suspicious. And you should be. You've earned that through experience.
That's right.
Once you acknowledge someone's pain and acknowledge a truth, a lot of the tension goes out of the air.
That's right.
And then people are willing to listen and engage in conversation. But until you do that, they're defensive.
That's right. That's right.
And I got a lot of that from Russia, and I got a lot of that from my grandfather. A lot of the other thing that I wouldn't have wanted to do is go in and be like, look how smart I am.
Mhm.
If you worked as hard as I, we all have the same opportunities. If you worked as hard as I did, you'd be in this
Yeah.
position. We all know that's not true.
Right.
Everybody, everybody, not everybody is given the same opportunities.
That's right. And we appreciate you acknowledging that, if I can speak on behalf of all of the brown people. I've been to a number of your community meetings, and they are that way. Um, Peter, do you keep count? How many community meetings have you held?
I've stopped counting. And it also depends on how you define community meeting, because sometimes a community meeting is me presenting to 50 people,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's a one-on-one.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But
I
you've had hundreds.
yes, at this point, I mean, I've owned them all for about 3,000 days. Uh,
Okay.
that's my quick math on 9
Uh-huh.
years.
Uh-huh.
Has to be There have to be at least 200 days in there where I've had at least one community
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah.
Uh,
Easily.
yeah, I mean, this morning I had a meeting with all of our tenants. In some ways, that's a community meeting.
Absolutely. So at the start of this process, and I remember some of it, but God knows I wasn't there for all the things. But at the start of this community trust situation that you had to build a lot of trust with our community.
hmm
I still am having to build trust with people who look like me, and we come from the same place. So how difficult, even going in saying those kinds of things, and how difficult was it to get? How long did it take?
You know, I'm not sure I'll ever know, because I don't know what was said after I left the room.
That's fair.
I left a lot of meetings feeling like, okay, I think we made some progress there.
Hmm.
That that may have been me kidding myself.
I
I
don't know.
I feel like at this point,
Hmm.
there's a lot of trust
Hmm.
because we've delivered on things.
Yes.
Um, the other thing I'll say is that I really don't love the word community,
Really? Tell me why.
because it implies that there's only one.
Hmm.
And there are lots of different communities in Southern Dallas.
Yeah.
There are lots of different communities within a 10-block radius of RedBird.
Yeah.
I almost called it RedBird Mall. It's the shops at RedBird.
Shops at RedBird.
Older people and younger people have completely different approaches
Hmm.
to uh, race relations, for instance. They have completely different commercial wants and needs.
Hmm.
They had completely different ideas. So, which community am I talking? If there's only one community, which community am I talking to? There's lots of different communities, and I think one of the problems
Hmm.
that we face right now is that there there can sometimes I think that Black communities can sometimes be approached as if they are monolithic. And you know perfectly well, Black communities are not monolithic. No community
That's
is
true.
monolithic.
That's right. That's right.
There are Black Democrats and there are Black Republicans,
Absolutely.
right? There are Black people who trust white people and Black people who don't trust white people.
That's true.
There are Black people who want to shop at Central Market, and there are Black people who want to shop at Joe V's, just like everybody else.
Right. Right.
And so I think we need to acknowledge that Black communities are very diverse.
That's right.
They may all have more melanin in their skin
Mhm.
than white people do,
Mhm.
but they're not monolithic.
Very interesting. I love the perspective.
Yeah, and white people aren't monolithic either.
Sure. Sure. And I use that word all the time. So thank you for challenging that. I will rethink that going forward. Okay, so I know there has to be one of these meetings that stands out in your head. What is something that's come out of one of these meetings that has totally surprised you?
I'll give you a positive and a negative
Okay.
one.
Okay.
So the positive one is that we were at a community meeting at one of the libraries. I can't remember which one. I think it was on Hampton.
Mm-hmm.
And a community member said, "We need office space."
Okay.
And specifically, she said, "We need incubator space."
Okay.
And that is how we ended up getting the idea for the Dallas Entrepreneur Center at RedBird, which is now one of our most important tenants and has helped launch a lot of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
That was 100% from the community. I wish I knew who said it
Mm-hmm.
so I could thank her.
Mm-hmm.
But that was a great idea.
Uh-huh.
The negative one was that there was an elected official.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say which one,
It's okay.
but suffice it to say that this elected official did not like me and did not trust me.
Okay.
And after a community meeting, came up to me, put his or her finger in my face and said, "I'm coming for you." That was very surprising also.
I apologize if that has happened to you.
You don't need to. Like I said, distrust is well earned, and there's not just one community.
Yeah.
And there are some people that have a life experience that is going to inform their not trusting someone who looks like me.
Sure. Sure.
So I didn't take it personally. I was a little taken aback.
Sure.
And in fairness, that elected official has never done anything to me, has never, it hasn't, that elected official never came for me.
Okay.
And so nothing came of it, but it was an early meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and an early community meeting, and it was a very important lesson for me on the depth of feeling that that certain communities within the greater community
Mm-hmm.
had on this topic.
Yeah. Now, I know that you had some preparation in going to another country and coming here. You had some preparation for what was to come, which is to purchase this area. I mean, you have been like somewhat of a savior in this area
Don't use that word,
to
please.
some extent. Now, I'm not saying the savior of the world, but I'm saying for this area, it created all kinds of. You started it all by purchasing this thing. But question for you, do you think you were truly prepared for what was to come? Like when you were thinking this through?
No. So first of all, I want to make very clear that what I am is an investor looking to invest in a profitable way.
Sure.
Now, I'm not going to deny that there is a soul to this investment, because there are lots of ways to profit, and I'm not going to, I just won't profit in an exploitative way.
Mm-hmm.
But somebody once said to me, "Oh, my mind is blown. This is so creative." And I said to her, "This is a pretty plain vanilla mixed use development. The only thing creative about it is that it's in a Black community. That's the big idea,"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which is kind of sad.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I had no idea what I was getting myself
Mm-hmm.
into.
Mm-hmm.
Start with the fact that I'd never done a real estate deal before.
Okay.
And real estate, it's not rocket science, but it is complicated.
Right.
And there are areas of expertise that I lacked and still lack. And so I look back at some of the decisions that I made 7-8 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I really want to hit the rewind button and redo them,
Mm-hmm.
because I made some very costly mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
I would say that the relations with the community
Mm,
have not really been all that surprising. I
mhm,
think I did know what I was getting myself
mhm,
into.
mhm,
The obstacle that I really underestimated
mhm,
was the resistance that tenants and other developers would have to the idea that a predominantly Black community could support high quality amenities.
mhm.
Um, I remember when the Starbucks opened now almost 6 years ago.
Gosh, it's been that long.
It was December of 2018.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I remember when it opened,
Mm,
and Sharon Grigsby, who's a columnist for the Dallas Morning News, who I think is a really phenomenal
mm,
journalist,
mhm,
wrote a piece about how at the grand opening, everybody was surprised. The white people from North Dallas came to the Starbucks and were surprised that there was something this nice in Southern Dallas. And the Black people from Southern Dallas came to the Starbucks and they were surprised that someone put something so nice in Southern Dallas.
mm,
The surprise was for different reasons.
right.
One was an underestimation of the community,
Mhm,
and the other was based on expectations that had been taught.
mhm.
Um, and she wrote about how sad it was
Yeah.
that everybody was surprised because it's a nice
Yeah.
Starbucks. It would fit right in Highland Park,
Right.
um, which is what we always have want. That's been our goal, is to
Mhm,
make it, as nice as North Dallas.
mhm,
Um, but those impressions that other developers and tenants have of Southern Dallas as being universally poor, universally
mhm,
dangerous, they're very sticky.
mhm,
They're hard to unstick.
mhm,
And we still fight that battle every single day.
mhm,
The other thing I've realized is that it's very linked to racial bias.
mhm, mhm,
You cannot separate the two,
mhm,
because people make comments to me that they wouldn't necessarily make around Black people,
mhm.
but they feel their guards are down
Right.
around me. And it's not like they're, you know, KKK members in their hoods.
Right.
I haven't encountered anyone who has conscious ill will.
Right.
I really haven't. Everybody is rooting for this to work,
Mhm,
but sometimes they can betray a bias where the comforts and conveniences of Black people are are made to be less important
mhm,
than the comfort and conveniences of white people.
mhm,
Um, and it really boils down to, on an unconscious, on a subconscious level,
mhm,
do they think that this community deserves the
mhm,
nice amenity?
mhm.
I, I really do believe that for the vast majority of people, that is not a conscious thought.
I agree.
And so, in that sense, we've evolved,
Mhm.
right? Because it used to be a conscious thought,
Right.
but we haven't evolved far enough.
Mhm,
Um, we haven't evolved far enough so that it's not an unconscious
mm.
bias.
Peter, as you explained that very well, might I add, um, I really would be in support of you running for an office.
Thank you.
Not that that means a whole lot, but I would be, and we need to use that in other areas other than in the Redbird area. Um, Peter, I know that you've learned a lot in terms of structuring real estate deals and those kinds of things, but if you could just pick out one lesson learned, the biggest lesson learned in this whole deal, what would it be?
About real estate or just in
In
general?
general.
Oh, what I was talking about before, biases are sticky.
Okay. Okay.
That is the lesson learned. It, I'll tell you a story.
Okay.
So Terrence Maiden is my development partner. I always joke, I don't know whether I'm his daytime wife or he's my daytime wife,
Oh,
but we're
goodness.
daytime married. We talk a lot,
Mm-hmm.
and he's been an absolutely integral part of this development.
Yes.
Not quite from day one, but almost.
Yes.
So when we got the Starbucks lease signed, which was a big coup,
Mm-hmm.
he called a restaurateur that he knew
Mm-hmm.
in North Dallas, not a super fancy restaurant, but one that had other locations in shopping centers with Starbucks,
Mm-hmm.
and said, well, we got a Starbucks. You should come look at RedBird. And the guy said, Starbucks will never work in that community. And Terrence said, okay, after it's open, if it's working, will you come down and take a look? Absolutely. So flash forward, I don't remember how long it had been open, but long enough to know that it was successful.
Mm-hmm.
And Terrence called up this restaurateur again and said, well, Starbucks is working. You said you'd come down. And he said, Starbucks works everywhere.
No, it does not.
And so the lesson there is he didn't want to open a restaurant at RedBird.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that he probably didn't remember what he'd said earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but we did.
Mm-hmm.
And he had an opinion. And his opinion was that his restaurant wouldn't work at RedBird.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That it's interesting that you brought up Mr. Maiden. Have you noticed, Peter, a difference between how potential tenants would treat you versus
No.
really?
I haven't. I do think that this development was viewed by the public at large, by the city of Dallas, by the press, as viable because a white person made the investment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, first of all, I put a lot of personal money
Mm-hmm.
in it,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm many things, but I'm not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that meant something.
Right.
But I also think that because I'm white, it validated
Mm-hmm.
the thesis.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, he's objective
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
versus if someone who put in the same amount of money but was black put the money in, it would be, oh, he's biased towards his own community.
Mm-hmm.
When in fact, I think the opposite is true, because I think, you know, African Americans are able to see this community with clearer eyes,
Right.
in all its glory,
Mm-hmm.
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
But I have never. You'd have to ask Terrence, but I have never seen Terrence treated disrespectfully. I've never seen him blown off. Most of the major tenants that we have, Terrence brought in.
Okay.
Or if he didn't bring them in, he played a key role in closing the deal.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said earlier, I've never seen anything overt like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's good. So, Peter, why RedBird? Obviously, you could have made money anywhere. You know how to make money.
Well, I do ask myself that at 3 a.m. sometimes.
Do you?
Yes, I do. Because there are faster ways to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I got to the point in my life where making money wasn't satisfying enough to get me excited. And sometimes I wish that I had stuck with private equity, because I'd have a lot more than I have now.
Mm-hmm.
But I was not getting up excited to go to work every day.
That matters.
It matters particularly because you don't do a very good job. I mean, it matters for your soul,
Yeah,
but also like if your mind is wandering during a business meeting, you're not going to make a very good investment.
that's right.
So I was looking for something that was both profit seeking, but also soul filling.
Yeah. Okay.
Um, and I looked for about 5 years. It was 5 years between the time I left my old firm and the time I bought RedBird. And I thought about a lot of different things. Maybe I want to own my own business, buy an operating business, something that, that can be, mine, that I can sink my teeth into, something that I can create a family legacy for my kids.
Hmm.
I thought about lots of different things. And the thing that I kept coming back to was this idea
Hmm.
that there was a supply demand imbalance,
Hmm.
that there was a demand for high quality amenities,
Hmm.
but a very low supply of them.
Hmm.
And that there was money to be made by servicing that demand
Hmm.
the way you service commercial demands all over the place.
I love that. So I know you're super busy. I've only got two more questions for you.
I'm good.
Just two more questions for you. So the first one is, would you ever do this again somewhere else? And the second one is, would you walk us through the progress at Redbird?
Well, the first answer is no.
Okay.
Um, I first of all, I'm almost 10 years older than I was. Um, just from for my own sanity, I don't ever want to put this much of my own capital in any one thing ever again.
Okay.
Um, Now, would I advise someone on their doing it? Sure.
Okay.
Terrence wants to do this all over the place,
That would be great.
and he is doing it in other
Okay.
places. In terms of the progress, um, I think I would say phase one is done.
Hmm.
All the site work is done. We've renovated almost every mall building. The Sears is UT Southwestern. The Dillard's is an office and medical building. The mall has Dallas College.
Hmm.
We've put new facades on the mall. We've built out a lot of the perimeter retail that on Camp Wisdom Road. And so when you drive up there, you absolutely know that things are different.
That's right.
Um, we are still working very hard on bringing Tom Thumb,
Hmm.
the grocery store, which I know will be very welcomed by the community. Um, where we're really focused right now is bringing in a big office tenant.
Okay.
And it's a hard office market because people are remote working. And Southern Dallas is not an established office market.
Right.
It's not known, other than the office building we're sitting in right now.
Hmm.
Southern Dallas is not known for its office
That's
buildings.
right.
Um, but if we really want to have a vibrant mixed use development, we need more daytime traffic.
Hmm.
And in order to have more daytime traffic, you've got to have offices where people are coming to work so that at noon they get hungry and they want to eat. And that will bring more restaurants and more retail. And so that's sort of initiative 1, 2, and 3 for 2025 is land a large office tenant.
Okay. So I lied. I do have another question.
Okay.
When do you anticipate just being finished?
Well, I think this development could go on for 20 more years
Okay.
because think about it this way. Right now, it costs, rough numbers, about $25,000 per parking space to build a structured parking garage.
Okay.
So it's very, very expensive.
Hmm.
But at some point, the land value is so high that it is worth the expense to go vertical.
Hmm.
We see that happening in Uptown,
Hmm.
tall towers now, because the land value is very, very high.
Hmm.
We're not even close to that yet, but
Hmm.
we have 100 acres.
Okay. Wow.
You can build a really nice 10-story office tower on 2 acres.
Hmm.
So I think this could be going on the way Uptown has gone on for the last 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do I still want to be doing this in 30 years? I'll be 84,
Okay.
right? And so at some point, I would like to be able to sell the development
Mm-hmm.
and hand this off to someone who shares the vision and has the capital and the time
Mm-hmm.
to continue to see the vision evolve.
Okay.
So I don't think it'll ever be done. We have over 30 acres of just development parcels that are empty.
Oh, wow.
That's going to take a long time to fill up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Peter, if there was some young person that was watching this right now and they wanted to be you when they grew up, what is the recommended path for them to get as much education, experience, knowledge, all the things to be a real estate developer one day? What would you recommend for that person?
Well, everything is going to be a total cliche,
Sure.
but really pay attention to your education.
Hmm.
Even if you think, and I tell this to my kids all the time, even if what you think what you're learning is useless, what you're learning to do is think critically.
Mm-hmm.
And AI may be able to write a perfectly good essay,
Mm-hmm.
but it's still not able to think critically.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can think critically, you can problem solve and you can go do whatever you want. So pay very close attention to your education, seek out every opportunity you can seek out, and really don't worry about how much money you're making until you're about 35. Your 20s are all about learning. I mean, obviously you have to make some money
Right.
to live, but what I was worried about when I was in my 20s was what job will allow me to learn the most, so that during your years when you are old enough and mature enough and you have the wisdom and experience to apply that learning, you can really make the most money.
Wow. I wish I would have had this conversation with you 30-ish years ago, maybe. It would have been valuable then.
Well, I talked a lot about my grandfather. My father gave me that advice
Okay.
because I remember when I was I had a couple of options when I was trying to get into investment banking, and it was big firm or small firm, and that's what he said to me was worry about where you're going to have the best learning experience. At a junior level, it doesn't matter how prestigious the deals you're working on are. None of that matters. What matters is where are you going to have mentors, where are you going to learn.
Wow.
So like I said, I was born on third base. I had great parents, great family support. I feel very lucky.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you're very fortunate, but we're fortunate to have you doing what you're doing, not just for the Black community, but the Oak Cliff community, which includes all of us. There's a large population of Hispanics here, of Black people, all the people.
And listen, I went to a Bretton Woods Homeowners Association meeting the other day.
Mm-hmm.
There were 20 people at the meeting. 17 of them were white.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a diverse community.
It is. I love it too. Of course, I live in Oak Cliff. I love Oak Cliff. And, I on purpose bring people that live up north to Oak Cliff so that they see that it's not just us down here.
Right.
And so every weekend I'm in the Bishop Arts, and I said that I wouldn't do that, but I'm in Bishop Arts every weekend, and it's nothing but diversity.
Yes. Well, Bishop Arts in particular has it's been very gentrified.
Mm-hmm.
Very gentrified.
Yeah. It's a wonderful destination, as is the shops at RedBird.
Well, I appreciate that. We're a little behind Bishop Arts. We're still working on it.
No, we love it. We love it. It is a wonderful asset here in Oak Cliff, and so we're grateful for you.
Thank you.
You being who you are and your commitment to this area, because you didn't have to make money here, and we appreciate that you did. So
Thanks.
thank you for your investment, and thank you for your time today. I know you're super busy.
This was fun.
Yeah,
This was fun. I've done quite a few podcasts. This was a good one. You asked very thought-provoking questions.
Thank you so very much. I'm grateful you're here. So come on back.
I will anytime.
I'm your host, Keandra Jones. And again, thank you for watching another episode of Strictly Business Unscripted. We'll see you next time.